So if we can try and pick up with where we left off last week, which now I'm not quite sure. Um,
Oh, I think we were
so well,
about
and
halfway through.
yeah, we were. Is there anything um, that any of you that comes to mind as you're picking Amy-Jill up and then picking up those parables that might be a good jumping off spot for us?
Yeah, I'm on page 169, where she kind of gets into the weeds a bit. I'm interested that she talks about these as a leaf and branch, which gives me the idea of the tree being watered by God's word. And I'm on page 168 in the second paragraph. Mark speaks of a vegetable and that the branches must be his misunderstanding of it. Um, she goes on to talk about the concept, the difference, and I was thinking the difference between vegetable, tree, bush, and the idea of the smaller seed. And I think it's easy for me to get into more thinking about the rather than the concept of the seed than the and thinking of the trees and the bushes, the bigger picture instead. Uh, that can be. I kind of like also the Jewish customs she talked about, and this is where I learned the most from her. That she talks about the Jewish customs of planting and purity, and the mustard seed in terms of empire, and that's the very last sentence on the second to last paragraph on page 169, where she talks about the mustard seed in terms of empire. And I'm going, wow, wow, what?
So that sentence, the second branch frequently becomes deformed by misreadings of mustard as a noxious weed rather than a valued medicinal plant, of Jewish customs regarding planting and purity, and of the mustard seed in terms of empire.
Mm-hmm.
So does she go on to talk about that?
No.
I'd like
Well,
to interrupt.
well, yeah, in a way she does in the last paragraph. And I'll start with the second sentence. The fertilization of the plant proceeds, showing how the parable poses challenges to Jewish readers and at the same time treats distinct Jewish practices with respect. It says that Jesus was not trying to overthrow the Jewish concepts.
Okay. Yeah, that I
So,
think that's the really important thing. Okay, Jane Simon.
On 167, Darwinism or
Hmm.
natural selection turns out to support Christianity according to this parable.
Hmm.
That's what she wrote.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In terms of, she doesn't take up the resistance or the talk about empire. At the very end, on 181, she does say the parable is less about the fall of empire than it is the ability of God's creatures, feathered or flesh, to survive, to make do with whatever is available. The message may be less one of imperial critique than of ecological adaptation and survival. I think we need to hear that in these
Hmm.
days.
Hmm. That goes right back to that comment, Jane Simon, Darwin.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in the first, what's partial paragraph on 69, there is a reference to empire just a little differently where um, she mentions, I can't say his name, Shatroff. He said the mustard,
chakra.
the mustard bush is meant to indicate the different quality of God's cosmic majesty in contrast to the imperial world powers. So there's that comparison comes back to empire.
Mm-hmm. Kind of interesting.
I'm fascinated. I mean, one of the one of the interesting things to do is looking at passages that are in all three of the synoptic gospels, and looking at what they are, how they're different, how they're the same, what the, what did trying to deduce from that what the agenda of the writer and the editor might be, and I think this is one of those. I mean, that there's a few things we might then be able to say about it, that my goodness, this must be a really important story,
Yeah.
for having shown up in all three gospels. And that I think is paradoxical in and of itself,
Mhm.
because, what is the story about? But this teeny weeny itsy bitsy little seed.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe
And
is
maybe
it about that? Yeah, go ahead, Jane.
maybe it shows up 3 times because nobody's quite getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got that.
That could very well be it. I do, I've heard sermon after sermon after sermon, as I'm sure you may have as well, about growth, whether it be church growth, spiritual growth, um, that, we compare all that to the mustard seed. And I just, it seems that, maybe this is a case of Occam's razor, right? That the simplest explanation is is the is the explanation.
Mhm.
Uh, but that it just seems more complex than merely growth.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is how she got involved with that in Empire. Somebody can, oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
explain
I
that to me.
agree, Anne. That's a puzzlement.
Yeah, I don't quite get that.
Coming back to what Jane said though about it, not maybe we're not getting it, or maybe it's that important,
Yeah.
right? And the fact that God will take a small seed and
Mhm.
he will do what he wills with it
Mhm.
Mhm.
and make it something impressive. And so I think sometimes, again, maybe it is Occam's razor,
Mhm.
right? So I
But
don't know, because that is a really important point, right? That God takes the seed, God
Mhm.
takes it, and he develops it. And sometimes
Mhm.
we insert ourselves.
Mhm.
Right, get in the way. Okay, Mary Lou and then Jane.
but it takes man to plant it.
Yes.
And to water it and to
Mhm.
care.
Right. So it's always both and, I think.
Exactly.
Mhm. I was just going to say, Annetta, that your comment also strikes me as similar to what to the Luke verse, where the apostles say, "Give us more faith,"
Mhm.
and Jesus says, "You only need this little tiny bit." I mean, they're like demanding that
Yes.
Jesus give the faith, and it's no, the faith is already in you. Grow it.
Develop it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at page 178, because I think that's as far as we got last time around. And
Yeah.
so she makes this comparison at the at the top with the yeast story, like beginning with yeast and ending up with bread. The movement from seed to plant produces something desirable and something that is more than the sum of its parts. With yeast and seed, one can do little, but with the bread and the plant, much can be gained.
Hmm.
Boy, I'm losing what page that is.
And
When,
like Mary Lou said, both of the bread takes the human intervention.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I think that that's fascinating. so as I preach on the Luke 17 passage, which uh, is that faith the size of a mustard seed, it's this big. Um, that um, that's all that's needed. That's all that's needed, and that's what the gift is, isn't it?
Mhm.
I mean, that's God's gift of faith. Is
That's all, it's almost that's all that God has to give us,
okay.
right?
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Because we need to add the water. We need to
yes.
Hmm.
pursue growth.
And at the same time, because that's what God has given, that is enough,
Yeah.
right?
Sufficient.
Yes, we don't need to be grasping for more. We need to be growing
Hmm.
what is right there in front of us.
Hmm.
It also strikes me, though, going back like with the yeast is hidden, the seed is hidden.
Mm.
So it's there, but it's hidden,
Yeah.
but it needs to be brought out.
Mm. That's yeah. Mm.
And I think that answered the questions that I had about two things, how people can start, and I'm thinking about the seed where he talks about it being sown on the three different kinds of soil
Yeah, there's the other seed. Yeah.
where and I'm thinking about relatives of mine who've had the seed sown and then either the cares of the world or they got like Terry involved in other things, that it has to be nurtured. And that's part of our job,
Mm.
I guess, is to help be the nurturers.
Yeah. So let's move on, page 178, to the birds.
Oh yeah, I love the birds.
The,
Hey, little bird.
the parable, however, has more than just seed and tree. It also has birds. Thus, commentators who cannot find mustard in the scriptures of Israel go bird hunting. I love fighting, just love it. Birds of the heaven fly through the tonic. Is that right? Tonic almost 50 times, starting as early as Genesis 1:26, where God states of humanity, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over the cattle. So anyway, all of these connections about birds with sheltering in trees.
Mm-hmm. As we shelter in the faith
Yeah,
and in the church.
that whole idea of sheltering. And that tree or vegetable, whichever it is we're going with, has to get pretty big, doesn't it, for the birds
Mm-hmm.
to be able to shelter in it?
The cedars talks about the cedars of Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty tall, thin trees. I've never actually been there, so you'll have to share with me what they really look like. Anybody?
Well, having lived in the woods for a lot of years and now living out here where there, as there's not very many trees. It doesn't take a very big tree for the birds to come because we planted a fair number of trees in our little postage stamp yard. And our son keeps saying, you're just trying to reinvent the woods, but not quite. But it's interesting to me how quickly we've been able to attract birds
Hmm.
because that was our goal with planting them. So it's not necessarily about that it has to be huge. And I think about that is in our faith. It's not that we
Hmm.
have to be giants in our faith
Hmm.
to be shelter.
So that whole sheltering image, I think, is incredibly important.
Yeah.
And I'm jumping to page 179 at the bottom. Making this reading even more attractive to present day interpreters is the connection of the birds to the Gentile nations. With this
Oh, yeah.
conclusion, the parable shows that God's empire is multicultural, but it arrives via natural process and not nuclear power. Fascinating. Um, so she comes up with the other, unlike the image of the vineyard, which had become a conventional image of Israel, birds nesting in a tree was not a conventional, and this is the one that Anne pointed out. Birds nesting in a tree was not a conventional image for empire. Had Ezekiel described his mighty cedar as a tree, those are just fascinating ideas she's pulling up.
Ooh.
And she goes back to, at the bottom of page 180, the focus of the parable is not on the contrast to other types of trees, but if a contrast is to be foregrounded, it is on the size of the seed versus the growth or size of the result of its
Yeah, a
germination.
small seed.
It's almost like that's for this particular image that is as compelling as it gets. The size of that seed and the size of the whatever it is that it grows into, whether it's a bush or a tree or whatever it is, that is the central image in this parable. Go ahead, Jane. Simon.
Something I've always gotten out of this is that the seed is so tiny and represents us.
Mm-hmm.
And why don't we get busy and grow? And we can do a lot for the kingdom as a such. But that's the point of the whole parable is what I see out of this.
And I think she agrees with you this time. I mean, not this time as like none other times, but that this really seems to be what she's getting at. She's refuting all of these other sort of scholarly arguments about what this might be about and coming back to that centrality. This is about an itsy bitsy little seed that grows. Mary Lou?
Well, what I was thinking then is that seeds will grow into things that are differing in sizes. So if we compare the seed to the faith that is implanted in us, it grows in different ways and in different sizes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we aren't supposed to be jealous of each other's sizes as they're growing, but worry about ours. And I was just thinking of my Daughters of the King, where it says, I cannot do and Mother Teresa, I cannot do everything, but I can do one thing.
Yeah.
And even if you are Sharon Grover or me, handicapped in one day, there's always some small thing you can do for the kingdom. And each of those counts. On page 181, I had written in the side of the third paragraph, where it starts out to speak of the parable that great outcomes come is correct from small beginnings is correct, but banal. And I wrote your abundance and enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
What outcomes might, it says part of the good world God gives us. The seed insists on growing to be used by anyone who finds the plant. Like the vast amount of bread the woman baked, the mustard plant offers more than a single person can use. The invitation to partake is a universal one. Yeah. And that was where I had that circled with enough, as the birds so neatly demonstrate. I never thought mustard was a noxious weed, but it can be. I guess people can be allergic to it as wild mustard grows along the sides of the road.
Well, wild mustard is taking over large portions of Wisconsin woodland. So it
Yeah.
it can be
Because
noxious.
they decided they want to naturalize everything and don't realize that there might be a problem with some of those things.
Well, there's yeah, but that's our human intervention, which is not
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
I wanted to comment though on size. I think that we as humans evaluate size or growth differently than God does. And I think
Mm.
that we might see someone who we think might be small in faith, and yet might be huge in faith. And one of the things I think about in that is the scholarship fund at Trinity and how unexpected that was to you, and yet how many people it has blessed. But we know the size of that mustard seed
Mm.
growth was
Mm.
not evident to anyone until the death of
Mhm.
And
the
I have to
perpetrator.
share
And
with
I just think about how we have to be really careful with our perception, because as much as we try not to be, we are judgmental creatures.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
That's a
that dear
great
lady, Lucille, was a close friend of my mother's. In fact, she got me through algebra. She was very what we call, remember the story Jane and Sarah Plain and Tall? She
Mhm.
was plain and tall. The students made fun of her in high school because she was not good looking and she was very quiet. She had a bit of a limp. She didn't look like anybody. And yet, from the time she started teaching, and this was when they got paid very little in the 20s and 30s, 1920s and 30s, she put $50 away every month from her paycheck for that scholarship, and she lived to over 100.
Yeah.
And she also, Sarah Plain and Tall, she was the most beautiful watercolor painter. So
So they're
this
talking
little
about this
seed was
wonderful scholarship fund at Trinity that that this woman,
Lucille Wells.
Wells, an unassuming teacher, put aside for her entire lifetime. That's up in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and
Actually, she left over
it's
a million.
and
It's
it's
over 2 million.
Two
and
Wow.
million.
and so the money that makes is given away for scholarships. So yeah, I think that's a absolutely perfect example
Mhm.
for what that looks like. Yeah. And could she ever have known? Um,
I don't know. She was a very quiet person. She never really, she'd come to church and go home. I mean, she wasn't part of the group ever.
mhm.
She was very quiet, very unassuming.
So
Um,
so on page 181, that same paragraph we've kind of been looking at, that Beeks starts with to speak of the parable as demonstrating that great outcomes arrive from small beginnings. The last sentence of that paragraph, instead of looking at the plant as a noxious weed, we might be better off seeing it as part of the gifts of nature, something so small allowed to do what it naturally does, produces prodigious effects. Um, there you go. And then this whole idea about the ability of God's creatures, feathered or flesh, to survive, to make do with whatever is available.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Uh, the message is less one of imperial critique than of ecological adaptation and survival.
Mhm.
She has throughout her entire book here, Amy-Jill has been quite a empire. The whole judgment of empire has been a huge theme. And in this one, it is not. It is not one of her themes. And I really like this um, ecological adaptation
and
and
survival, yeah.
survival. So I want to tell you about a book that we just read at Grace in the occasional book group that that happens there. We read The Serviceberry,
Oh,
the
yes.
same woman that wrote Braiding Sweetgrass.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a lovely
Kimmer.
book.
I haven't read Braiding Sweetgrass, and now I must go back and read it. But I did. We read The Serviceberry, and I'm just so glad to have read it.
Mhm.
And I think that So, so in some cultures, some themes I think make more sense than in other cultures. That's what Amy-Jill, I think, is teaching us here. And in the Serviceberry, what we're learning loads about is the natural economy. And I would call that God's economy.
Hmm.
And that the whole idea is that, these itsy bitsy teeny weeny berries, and how prolific they can be, and that they give rise to an economy that, well, shares, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Mhm.
she tells the story of a bumper, a farmer comes up, has a bumper. No, I think he has a kill, like a huge a deer or buffalo or something like that. And the question asked is, well, how are you good? And it's the same story too of the farmer in the Bible who has a bumper crop and who has to build, he's going to build more barns.
Hmm.
So what are you going to do with all that excess is what the
Right.
question is. And
Yeah.
how are you going to store it? And his answer is, I'm going to store it in the stomachs of all of the people in my community. That's what God's economy looks like.
Hmm.
That
What is the other book of that? I got one down and I don't know about these. I'm
the
sorry.
Serviceberry is the one I just read, and her
Oh,
first or previous book is called Braiding Sweetgrass.
Her last
yeah,
name is Kimmer.
Kimmer. And one of the reasons I haven't read Braiding Sweetgrass um, is because I have a lot of trouble trusting that people will tell the Native American story with compassion and truth. And so I tend to kind of wait and and be standoffish on that. But the Serviceberry, I mean, the book group was reading it, so I read it, and she t she
Kim,
she's
Kimmer is she is Native
yeah, she's
American.
pot. I
Yeah.
think she's
Hmm.
Potawatomi.
Yes, she is. Yeah.
Potawatomi.
can you give
She's
me the
She's
first?
she
Wisconsin
I
tribe.
I don't know her personally, but I do know people who know her through the
Yeah,
basket community.
yeah,
So she's part of the indigenous
right.
basket makers
Yeah.
that I know.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I think,
Mhm.
I have come to believe she is trustworthy in telling
She is.
that story. Anne, did you have a question?
Yeah, her first name is, and the spelling is a Kimmer, Kimmer.
Yes. With a
And her
K.
first
Yeah, you'll find it no problem, and it's a very important book in our culture.
Yeah.
the
And
service
it's very
berry.
pushed by the indigenous communities,
Yeah.
especially in the indigenous basket maker community and natural harvesters.
Hmm.
What's the other name of what's the other book?
The first book, well, the
I'm
one
putting it
about
in
this
the chat.
Thank
thank
you.
Okay,
you,
thank
Sharon.
you, Sharon.
So I bring that up all because I think it does have everything to do with the mustard seed uh,
Hmm.
parables, and how we kind of tell stories imbued with our cultural values. And Amy-Jill is helping us to understand stories in that Jewish cultural context. And I think that's incredibly important. And all I'm saying is that it's been a happy discovery for me in reading the Serviceberry to hear that story um, it, in an indigenous cultural telling
Hmm.
that really brings us, I think, to a very similar place. Um,
Hmm.
how do we authentically uh, be faithful, have faith the size of a mustard seed, because that's what we get. None of us are born with. I mean, it's another, right? We can go with the Madeline Langle story about that one. But that, um, do we have a responsibility in how that faith is Nurtured. I'm not so sure I'm thinking about shared in the mustard seed, but nurtured. And the
I think,
surface berry, the economy is, abundance. It's all about abundance and how we treat and live into that abundance. Jane?
Well, I'm the very last paragraph in the chapter is what struck me. Um, Toward the middle, she says, the challenge of the parable can be much homier. Don't ask when the kingdom comes or where it is. And then she says, the where is that it's already present in the world. The kingdom is present when humanity and nature work together and we do what we were put here to do. So if that, I think sometimes we think that the challenge is too big for us
mm-hmm,
and all we're called to do is something little. And maybe, maybe that's the concept of to think small, to
Yeah.
think about practicing this in my home, in
Mm.
my neighborhood, in my community, instead of solving world issues.
Well, and the second to the last paragraph in the middle, as Annetta had shown us, the second thing we need to do is to get out of the way. That we
Yes. Yes.
we tend to be the barrier
Yeah.
to everything, and we need to get out of the way. And I'm
we are
sorry.
not only the focus, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
That bloom where you're planted, right?
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good example of that, we don't have tons of money to give Echo. Those of you that live around here know about Echo. But I take, and a lot of other people,
Hmm.
take they need grocery bags to pack the groceries in that they give to those who need it. So we save our Woodman's grocery bags and take those down every week or every other week when I get enough for them to be able to use so they don't have to spend money on getting material to pack the groceries. That's, as Mother Teresa, I do love Mother Teresa. One small thing we can do,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that provides enough. My judgment is,
Especially.
am I always thinking, well, should I do more? Is that not enough? Well, at this point in our life, that may be enough this month.
Well, and especially as we're feeling as powerless and as much chaos
Yeah.
as we are living in right this very
Mm.
minute. That and I think that it's a big, huge thing. I mean, I think that's the power of the mustard seed parable is that um, doing that one thing um, is powerful and is exactly what we need to do. So, how do we, how and what is it? Um,
Well, also in growing it, that we share maybe we share the one thing we do to get others to do the one thing we're doing.
or the thing that they
That's
need.
how the mustard seed grows.
I finally decided to take action. So we're having a very important mayoral race here in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I finally decided to take action, and I hosted a house party for a mayoral candidate last night,
Mm-hmm.
and invited people. And I thought, oh my God, what are these people going to think of me? And
Mm-hmm.
um, anyway, my sister and I invited the people we know, her wonderfully agnostic friends and my Episcopalian friends, and we all got together and listened to the to this mayoral candidate who I think I just am so convinced that he can do what's needed here in Minneapolis. But it was the one small thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a door knocker.
No, I'm not either. I
But
can't, but I can,
sometimes
but
we
I
don't
can
know.
write letters.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes
I can sign my name. I can do small
sometimes we
things.
don't know it's the one small thing.
Yeah.
Ralph just reminded me of this story last night. Uh, Years ago, when we lived in Wisconsin, I would do spring walks because we lived in the woods, and I never advertised them. I would just call up some friends and say, "Hey, uh, the woods is coming alive, so I'm going to do walks on Wednesdays until the canopy is full. And we would just people would show up and a lot of kids. And it happened. I probably did it for 10 years, maybe more. And then life got busy and I stopped. And one time, Ralph and I were in Seattle. We were downtown Seattle, sitting in a little coffee shop. And this girl walks up to us, just like 24. She goes, Mr. and Mrs. Greyveld, it's so exciting to see you. And we're like, who is this person? Right? Because she does not look anything like the child, apparently, that I knew. And she introduced herself and she said, I said, what are you doing in Seattle? She said, I just took my first job. I'm a botanist because of you.
Oh my.
And we just about cried, right? Because all we did was say the woods are coming alive, come enjoy them. I didn't know I was planting a mustard seed, and I didn't do anything spectacular.
I had that happen.
Yes, exactly. And I think that
I
that's,
just lived me, right?
yeah. Do what you do. Do what, I mean, isn't that, we talked about that. What does faith look like? It looks like acting on that gift, whatever that
Mhm.
And
is.
sometimes God makes us have to think about that gift a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, Sharon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Acting on that gift.
Well, you have a good time next week, Kathy.
Yeah, I got these two friends coming from Rapid City. We're gonna go do you know Foil Arms and Hog?
I looked it up.
These three Irish guys who are just hilarious. Yeah, so we're gonna go do that, and then that's Thursday night, and then they'll stay overnight, and we'll go out for breakfast. I'm hoping my kids can come in because they were little people when we were in Rapid City. So hoping we can all go out to breakfast on Friday morning. So yeah, I'm excited about that visit. I wish it was going to be longer, but I get what I can get.
Yes, we do with our mustard seed. So we'll start
I
on.
have one thing to say. If you are interested in braiding seagrass or sweetgrass, Robin Kimmer reads it if you get the Audible, and it's really beautiful in her voice.
Yeah, I listened to the Serviceberry.
Okay.
She read the Serviceberry to me. It was
I know
so lovely. Yeah.
She has a lovely voice.
Not all authors have lovely reading voices, and she is one that does. Madeline Lingle is one that does not.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So she does a nice job reading her own work.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful listen. So
are we chapter 4 for the week after next?
no, chapter 6.
I'm sorry. I can't put my glasses on.
Chapter
Yeah,
6.
so for the week after next, we'll read chapter 6. And yeah, it looks like we'll need a couple weeks to do that, huh? Oh, but then we have the laborers in the vineyard. God, that's such a hard story. It'll be so interesting to see what she has to say.
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Great.
Love you.
Gail.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. We love
Good to meet you, Gail.
It was great.
Bye.
Yeah, meeting you
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
See you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
You bet.
Bye.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good time and God bless you.